Hi, have a nice lunch. You know, Obama has gotten so phony in the way he's handling this debt deal. There are two key points he keeps ignoring. Number one, that a default wouldn't be really a default. And number two, that there is a deal that's going to pass that worked out. The only obstacle is him. So let's deal with the first of these. I touched on this on a video on Tuesday. Obama will have enough revenue to pay most of what he wants, even if there is no increase in the debt limit. The government's going to take in about $180 billion in tax money in August, and Social Security will cost $58. Defense will cost the same amount, $58. Debt service will cost $23. There's plenty of money to do all of that. There's some accounting gimmicks you have to do and need some legal hoops to jump through, but it won't be any big problem. The thing that he can't do is pay the normal operating bureaucracy. But he's not going to get up there and say, if you don't increase the debt limit, the Bureau of Labor Statistics is going to close down, or the FTC will close down, or the National Labor Relations Board will have to suspend operations for a week. That's not going to get a rise out of anyone. So he has to talk about default and Social Security and Medicare and really scare people in a way that just is unpardonable. He hinted at the truth in his address Monday night, but you need a code book to understand it. He suddenly stopped talking about defaulting on our debt and said defaulting on our obligations. Now, by obligations, he presumably doesn't just mean the money we've borrowed, but the money we've committed to spend. In his view, if we fund the Labor Department for a year at a certain level, that is an obligation of the government to keep paying the bureaucrats. And that's what he's talking about when he says obligation. The other thing that's totally phony about his approach on it is that really, when you get down to it, Reid and Boehner are pushing essentially the same plan. Reid has wisely abandoned the push for tax increases. And his plan and Boehner's plan basically are the same in the amount of domestic spending that they cut. The only addition is that Reid also takes credit for ending the war in Afghanistan and Iraq and running down that expenditure. And he incorporates that savings into the bill, whereas the Republicans don't, but they do allow excess spending for those operations. So one is above the line, the other is below the line, but that's a minor distinction. Now, the reason they do it that way is that Boehner wants to only give a debt limit increase sufficient to take us through the first of the year, because he wants Obama to have to go through this again and have all look so pathetic as he does now. Reid wants to do Obama a favor and push it over until after the election so that he doesn't have to go through this dismal process again. But for Washington, that's a pretty minor difference. Now, I think the Republicans in the House are overreacting in rejecting the Boehner plan. There was some fiscal problems with it when it was first announced because it overstated the savings, and the Congressional Budget Office corrected that. But apart from that, which Boehner is now correcting, it's a pretty good plan. And as long as you are cutting spending by more than you're increasing borrowing, that's just fine. And the fact that it only permits you to raise the debt limit through the first of the year, hey, I'm for that. I want Obama to have to go through this nonsense again. Bad for him, good for the country to see him do it. So I like the Boehner plan. Now, a lot of Republican conservatives are raising hell because it doesn't require a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, and it doesn't cap spending as a percent of GDP for the next decade. And that's true. It's a shortcoming of the plan, but come on. We don't have the White House yet, and we don't have the Senate yet. So I think it's a pretty good deal, and I think they'll make it. The only obstacle is Obama, who jumped into the middle of this thing on Monday night after a deal had basically been cut on Sunday, blew the deal up, and insisted that tax increases get passed. Now, he's not going to have his way. He'll be brushed aside. But if there is a deadlock, and there is what he calls a default on our obligations, he's the culprit, because even the Democrats in the Senate and the Republicans in the House have more or less gotten together. So we'll keep following this together. Have a nice lunch. Tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit about why Obama did that. And there's a lesson here. He is controlled, owned, lock, stock, and barrel by the left. So tune in tomorrow and we'll talk about that. Thanks a lot.